There are some things I'll take a chance on, but life is already enough of a gamble for me to put my whole nest egg in the share market. So I take a calmer path. By investing in private credit, I know my money could be growing, not yo-yoing.
From Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Welcome to the COB this Wednesday afternoon. Great to have your company. I'm Juliette Sarli. Let's have a look at how the local market has fared this Wednesday. And of course, quite a bit of caution creeping in ahead of the Fed decision this evening, I should say. In fact, really tomorrow morning. What am I talking about? 4 a.m. tomorrow we'll find out what the Fed is likely to do. The likelihood of this 50 basis point cut very much sort of now being pushed out, but definitely a 25 basis point cut is expected overnight as well. Data showing that US retail sales increased more than expected in August, but doing little to change those rate cut expectations. And here, of course, it was all about the Wednesday wobbles, and there's very few sectors that are actually in the green today. You do have tech slightly higher, energy and utilities as well. And the fact that tech has turned positive, just, making a liar out of me with this next headline of tech wreck. But some of the tech players did come under quite a bit of a pressure today. And of course, it is all about the Fed ahead of this anticipated decision. Let's have a look at some of the sectors today, including some of the big tech players. And they've turned pretty mixed by the end of the day's trade. Xero, that was a really interesting one that Jared Rubin from Blackwattle was talking to me about today, the underperformance, how they still see some very solid upside. It's all about the AI thematic, as we know. Tech One and Zip, though, weighing today, and we did have a little bit of a pullback on the NASDAQ, but as Tony Sycamore from IG told me earlier today, you can't have these markets just go up and up every day. Let's have a look at the mining stocks as well, particularly amid news BHP is going to see some jobs lost at one of its mines in Queensland. Also, of course, the weakness in the iron ore price weighing on Rio Fortescue. South32, though, had a better day. And when it comes to the banking stocks today, mostly weaker as well, with the exception of NAB, which is just slightly higher. CommBank a tenth of 1% lower at $168.09. So we mentioned there BHP to sack 750 workers. This at one of its major coal mines in Queensland. It's going to suspend these operations. The joint venture known as BMA, Australia's largest exporter of steelmaking coal to Asia, and BHP saying that soaring royalty rates from the Queensland government combined with weaker coal prices have made operations there unsustainable. We're also watching Droneshield. There's been a raft of contracts given out to a lot of these defence players over the last week or so, and Droneshield's won another 2 fresh contracts with the US Defence Department worth almost $8 million. It's now sold 4,000 of its handheld units. Corporate travel remaining suspended because it's delayed again. The audit on its reports, it of course didn't file in time in terms of August reporting season, so is not allowed to trade. Not much movement in Orion Minerals, but it has signed a deal with global miner Glencore for about $250 million US in funding for one of its mines in South Africa. And a big fall in PYC Therapeutics. Now, Chair Alan Tribe will take over as Managing Director, and that's after CEO Rowan Hawkins stood down, or resigned, I should say. He's given 2 months' notice. Let's get more now and join Mathan Somasundaram from Deep Data Analytics, who joins me. What's your take on the market? Just a bit of treading water or not taking on too much risk ahead of the Fed, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, global funds will be doing the usual thing. Pretty much every non-farm payroll update, every inflation update, every US Fed update, the US market generally goes up, irrespective of the data. And I don't think tonight's going to be any different. And usually they take money out of the rest of the world and put it into the US, predominantly the tech. It's the usual game. So we're probably seeing a bit of outflow. It looks like it's pretty much an index play. You're pretty much getting all through the market money coming out, and we probably will see that in Europe as well. and we'll see how the Fed comes out. I think the 25 basis point was a given. I think the probability is over 90%. The Fed does not surprise, so that's pretty much a given. The 50 was, I think that's a bit out there. If they do move, even talk about 50, you got real problems because the reality is there's no data to back it. Yes, we've seen the employment market weaken, and that's been going on for 2 years. The non-farm payroll is catching up to the rest of the data. So I don't think that's a huge shock, but the inflation is going up. It's really hard for the Fed to do too much in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a good point. I mean, we don't really want to see 50 basis points, right? Because that signals something is very, very wrong. Speaking of what's happening geopolitically, we're seeing Ukrainian forces intensify strikes on Russian energy facilities. I mentioned Droneshield getting that other contract with the Defence Department. It seems likely that these sorts of deals are going to continue in those defence stocks.
Yeah, it's been a fan favorite for about a year and a half. I was actually surprised. I mean, we were in a number of them. We're still in a few. Codan is one of them. It's absolutely killed it. I think it's now 30 something. We're in at 4.5. We had Austal run from about $1.50 to like $7. Yeah, everything linked to defense is doing really well. The only problem the investors need to realize is when you start paying historical high multiples, then you're expecting years and years. We're talking 5 to 10 years of growth already kind of priced in. For that to happen, the world has to be in war pretty much for the whole time. I don't want to sound callous, but the reality is that just it's not going to happen. So there is a cycle, and don't get carried away. The thing about Droneshield is its market cap is $3 billion. It needs big contracts. Anything less than hundreds of millions of dollar contracts, you're only scratching the edges.
Indeed. All right. Well, what else has taken your fancy then? Of course, a little bit of movement coming through in energy players, real estate under a bit of pressure.
Look, the defensive yields are really getting attention. You're seeing things like APA. It's bounced from $6 to nearly $9 and is climbing. And it's just defensive yield. And if central banks want to cut rates, their cost of borrowing goes down and they pay you a pretty good yield to play. So things that are attached to specific thematics and paying you a good yield are actually doing quite well. So APA is one, rural funds, which is linked to the food dynamics, basically a specialized property REIT, but it works in farming and it pays you a pretty good yield as well. And the food sector is doing really well. You can see Elders, etc., all bouncing. And food meat prices are in multi-year high. Weather and supply side issues around the world is pushing that. And so those kind of specialized defensive yields are doing really well. And that's what we've been telling our investors to do, is to diversify into those kind of specialized good defensive yields. In an environment where central banks are trying to bring down cost of borrowing, those stocks will go up in value because they're giving you a pretty high yield.
Yeah, it's all about diversifying, isn't it? What do you make of corporate travel not giving its numbers to the ASX? Is it this year's star?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's been a sector that's had a few issues. The airlines have done well, the travel agents not so much. And we've had this cycle where we came out of the pandemic lockdown and you had the revenge travel thematic and everyone was spending. Now you can see consumer spending is struggling in all the areas, and that's probably going to spread into travel as well. Granted that most of the spending is done by the older generation, and they're still traveling, but I think the younger generation, as you get down the food chain, they're starting to run out of disposable income. So I suspect those things will start to play out. And if I can use my business as an example of the amount of Zooms you do, the amount of travels we used to do has dramatically reduced because of the improvement in the technology that we can do it over the web. So the need for corporate travel, literally corporates traveling, is a lot less than what it used to be. And I think that's a dynamic that's not going to change.
Yeah, and just on that theme, I should point out Virgin Australia today up by 0.6%. They're starting pet-friendly flights. I mean, this is maybe not so much a market question, but would you go on a flight with pets? I mean, I'm highly allergic. I would be steering clear.
Yeah, I think it is so interesting how when you wouldn't get this in a bull market for travel. As things slow down, then everyone's looking for unique, I guess, packages to attract customers. And it makes sense in that context. But yeah, I don't know how that works out in the mass market though.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I just see a whole plane load of sneezing people. Thank you, Nathan Samasundaram from Deep Data Analytics with us. Sticking stock specific, the stock of the day on the call was AccuSensus. We heard from our experts, Andrew Weiland from DP Wealth Advisory, Henry Jennings from Marcus Today.
I like this one. It's going to be my hedge with a world that is increasingly putting lower and lower speed limits on and putting more and more road rules in place for the safety of pedestrians and other cars. I think this one's got a bit of a future, and the US and the UK does offer that big upside, and it's a bit like one of those penguin stocks. Once you get one on board, the others tend to follow, and I suspect it's making some inroads into the US, and that growing presence there. I think it's increased its US jurisdictions to 6 by the end of FY25, so that will only get more and more. So as long as they can control the costs in the US in terms of rolling out the cameras and the AI, I think this one's got some good potential. So I'd be a buyer of this one.
The fact that they're looking at going offshore, I like the fact that they've got 21 million in the bank in cash and term deposits. I know consensus is $1.30 versus the $1 share price. So my biggest issue with it, which we've all laboured already, is that there's only it's $142 million market cap, and yet there's only $43,000 a day of shares that are traded. So please don't go in there and put a monster buy order in there. If you're going to do a buy, be sensible about it, nibble away, as my learned friend eloquently puts. But as a satellite exposure, it looks really interesting, so I think it's a buy as well.
All right, well, we had a weak session on the local market today. Let's have a look at some of the leaders, though, and of course still some upside in some of these coal players. Whitehaven in particular looking good, up 5%. Nuix, Liontown Resources, Karoon Energy and Yancoal also having a good day. To the downside, though, it was weakness coming through out of a lot of those uranium players, which rose yesterday. So Deep Yellow, Boss Energy coming off. Ingham's was ex-div today, down 4.7%, and New Hope giving back, I think, some of what it lost yesterday and maybe even more, down 8.4% today. In the small end of town, Alcidion had a good session, up by some 14%. But heading the other way in the small end of town were some of these stocks, including Pacific Edge, down by around 11%. All right, it's all about the Fed tonight. As we know, the Bank of Canada also coming through with its interest rate decision, and we've got US housing starts and building permits data too. Locally tomorrow, jobs data coming through from August. Now, CommBank saying about 20,000 jobs may have been created. That's still a pretty robust jobs market. We'll also get population data, 1.7% annual population growth expected. And we're still paying out these dividends to shareholders too. Cochlear, South32, Net Wealth, PWR Holdings, A2 Milk, among the stocks trading ex-div. The local market is lower ahead of the Fed decision, down 0.7%, a similar loss on the ASX 200. In fact, it has closed down 59 points to 8,815, and really only 3 sectors high, those energy players, utilities, and a slight gain in some of those tech stocks, but REITs, consumer discretionary material, healthcare, financial stocks, all underwater today. We'll be back from 9:45 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. We'll see you then.
The COB is brought to you by Montgomery Investment Management. The world is volatile. Your financial future doesn't have to be. Find out more at montinvest.com.